Hi everyone, and this is next episode of Pyjama Talks, Best Pyjamas and Best Talks. I'm Evgeny Kot, your lovely host, and you probably should know Anton. Anton is a Director of Product Management at Wrike. Hi Anton.
Hi.
And our guest today is Louise Bernstein. She is also Director of Product for HubSpot.
Yes, HubSpot, yes, and have been with HubSpot now for just over 4 years.
Probably for those who don't know about our products, maybe we can shortly, briefly introduce what do you do. So Anton, Wrike is a project management solution, right?
Well, I wouldn't limit it to that, right? Mm-hmm. So it's on the most probably thin surface, it is a project management solution, but at the end of the day, it's a collaborative work management solution. With whatever work you manage, then that's going to be your kind of project or whatever you manage, right? So it can be like a ticketing system or a CRM for that matter, but we're not kind of primarily a CRM, but we are doing that as well. So essentially it's a platform that allows you to manage your work and then do it in a collaborative fashion. So that's what we are.
Mm-hmm. And HubSpot's kind of not the same, but you're also doing kind of CRM stuff, right?
Yes. So we're a full suite front office at this stage for your sales team, customer success team, support team, your ops teams. And at the heart of it is a CRM to power all of those things. And what we're calling all these teams working together is the flywheel. So we like HubSpot to be the power behind all those teams working together really well, so they become more than the sum of their parts. And we do have people, a lot of companies actually sometimes do use a ticketing system as part of their CRM. A lot of companies have multiple, as they grow, multiple CRMs in their company, which is really an interesting scenario a lot of our companies come up against. So how do we work well together? So that is us in a nutshell.
These days, everything is online. Even some businesses that never considered to be online, they're still online. It means that on one hand, products like Wrike or HubSpot, CRM, digital management systems, they should be on the rise because everyone needs them. But does it mean that we can see rise of these systems too? So competition is even harder and even stronger than it was before.
It's really easy to make software now. So it's very easy to get in, it's very easy to form a startup and try and get going. So the competitive landscape is very, very full of small point solutions, as well as companies more like HubSpot, which are looking to do more of the full gambit. But it's hard to be very good at what you do, especially after 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. So it's very easy to get into the software game, very easy to build applications, very hard to make them stick and very hard to keep them successful. So there is a tail off. So it is very competitive it's very noisy, but I don't think there's a lot of companies which are going to be reliably good and sustainable to work with for the long term. But that kind of noisiness at the start is very exciting because it pushes all the other companies who are already in spaces to be better. It keeps that challenge really strong. So you can't be complacent. Even 10, 15 years ago, you could be complacent as a company once you were installed and once you got going. That complacency, people are eating your lunch every day or trying to eat your lunch every day, and you just can't let that happen anymore. So you have to be ahead of the game.
It is really easy to be complacent, but it's something that you should avoid, and that's something I would definitely agree with. But how do you do that? I mean, definitely there are a few strategies, right? So you can reinvent yourself every few years, right? So you could grow into a more mature models or more mature product and attack the various different market or a different market segment, or there are different strategies that you employ. So how do you do that?
I think companies fall in one or two categories, and you need to actually fall into a third. So the larger you get, you can become too risk adverse, and you just stay with what you know, and you don't look ahead. So you're totally focused on the now, and you're missing what you could turn out to be. You have other companies who are so focused on the new that they're not investing and ensuring that their current bread and butter is relevant, it stays relevant, and continues to grow. But you really need to be across the now and also the future. So your Horizon 1, which is the now, your Horizon 2, which is in a couple of years, and then your Horizon 3, which is those, you can even call them more moonshots. So, okay, who do we want to be in 5-10 years time? What are those big problems that we want to go after? And cut your time so it's allocated efficiently across those 3 horizons. So you are investing in the now, which is absolutely paramount, because that's where your revenue is coming from. Keep those customers happy and keep improving their day. If you do, they'll stick with you, and then you can grow with them as you grow to Horizon 3. And being just absolutely ruthless at listening to your customers. At every single decision point, it should be what impact does this have for my customer? You have to be dialed into your customers first, have the empathy there, and then grow your Horizon 1, Horizon 2, Horizon 3 investments.
So essentially you're saying that when you're kind of investing for the upcoming quarter or a year or a 3-year period, what you're doing is you're having that kind of investment thesis, right, which kind of divides everything that you have and every investment that you have in terms of teams, in terms of headcount, in terms of, time allocation, right? And then you split it into various parts depending on which kind of part of the time horizon you want to attack, right? So now, near term or future, right? And then do you have different teams working on that, or are they same teams that kind of divide their attention between these?
It's the majority is the same teams who are building towards a future, which is mostly Horizon 1, Horizon 2. Horizon 3 is really mostly at the C-suite level, there's not a huge amount of people thinking about Horizon 3, but you need to think about that. There are some companies who have labs, who have like special teams who are just doing experimentation, just thinking about Horizon 3 activities. I think they definitely have their place, and they are they're fast paced and they have full autonomy, but there can be a risk depending on the culture of your company where it's hard to then weave that back in to the rest of your company. And the other teams are going, well, we could have thought about those things and we just had some of that time, and then it would be extra relevant to what we're working on now, and we can work towards that versus it nearly being like an acquisition. Sometimes we have different tech, different people, different cultures trying to be woven in.
Can we, for example, say that product managers, just the product managers, they're more focused on Horizon 1, what's happening right now? More senior product managers, they're going further in future, and senior product director looking, 10 years perspective.
There should be always a thread. None of that should be done in isolation or silos. There should be an awareness that threads right the way down to every person in the company. If you don't have a connection for where we want to be in 5 to 10 years time links back to who we are today, people will lose focus. They'll lose the why I'm doing today matters. So yes, the more strategic you are, the longer term you're thinking, but you have to pass that down. You have to connect it down to what we're doing today, because it's all relevant. What you're doing today gets you to where you are in the future. And you want people to be excited about where that's going to take them. Of
course, the smaller organization is easier it is to keep this connection between bottom and top level. But how big is HubSpot and how you keep this connection?
We're touching, I'd say at this point towards 5,000 employees.
Wow.
5,000?
Yeah, that's a lot.
Wow.
It really is exponential growth. And every year it's getting faster and faster and faster. When I joined just over 4 years ago, we were about 2,500. So it really is growth, and it is hyperscale. And with that comes great excitement, because you can go after bigger things, and you're always, things are always changing, which is always exciting. But you have to be even more careful about how you disseminate information, how you ensure transparency, and how you keep everyone aligned to where you're going. It's harder to do the bigger you are. And it's even more important that you create a type of operating system around that growth.
Something really kind of resonated from what you said with what we do here at Wrike. We value our culture a lot, and then we're growing a lot. Like, for example, our present office that we are in right now in Czech Republic, it's really growing really fast, and with that growth we also want to maintain the Wrike culture, right? So we want us all to be Wrikers. We want to kind of propel this culture going forward, because we know how valuable it is, and we know how people are valuing this culture and how it reflects on the performance of the company overall. And that's why I think that you didn't say that directly, but I inferred that from what you said, that it's probably also very important for you as a company, right? And then with that rate of growth, how do you maintain this? Do you do something specifically to maintain the culture, to propel it throughout the company? Or what are you doing with that? Can you share that?
If you don't have a great culture, a company that people want to work for, with a mission that people believe in, with people that they like or trust, your product, no matter how successful it is today, will fail. It just will. Or it won't fail, but it'll stagnate, and you'll never know what you missed out on. You'll never know how good it could have been if you had a company where people liked coming to work every day and enjoying working with the people around them and what they were on. If you don't invest in that, your product will just pale out. So I think the secret sauce of our culture, or any company's culture, or the team which I work within, is the secret sauce is rethinking it all the time. It's challenging it all of the time. At every quarter, myself and my peers, we have a check-in to say, okay, is how we work together effective? Because we've grown X%, because we're working on X different problems now. Are the people we have in place the right people? Do we have balance across those teams? So are those teams healthy? Every week we are asking ourselves that question, because the change is happening so fast. And if we don't invest in the health, and we don't keep the health healthy, then you've fallen at the first hurdle.
It's kind of moving in the different directions. Be effective, and at the same time be sane, and not to go in a rush and crunches, deadlines, and other stuff. So yes, so how to combine it? If
you are only short-term thinking and just thinking of this week's deadline, it's a false economy. It is a false economy. You're gonna burn people out, and then you're back to what impact did we lose out on because people were tired? What impact did we lose out on because we had greater than average attrition? Now, teams need to push off and on. I mean, that's product. You're going to have months where you're just always on, but then you need to build in a period of time where people can just take a breather, have a reset, and build back up that momentum. If you're always asking people to work 110, 120%, there will come a time where your product will start losing out. But it is, especially, we're hyper growth, as you know. I mean, Wrike, you're growing, scaling. It is very hard to pull back sometimes. So instead of pulling back, I instead really work very hard with my peers, my teams, in take on the work with which you have capacity for. In years past, it would be, okay, what are the problems we can take on with X new headcount? And then, because everyone is looking for resources, it can take 6 months to get that great person in there, or 6 months to get a whole team spun up. And then, what happens? Other team have to take on the load because you have overpromised. Now, I'm not overpromising, but pushing yourself is always very positive. Like, you have to stretch. It's a different thing promising something for a team that doesn't exist because it's so hard to hire people. So now my strategy is take on the problems, not stretch ourselves, but with the people that we have in seat today.
Do you use any kind of online, online tool or instrument to manage OKRs throughout the company? Do you have that kind of single thing, or how do you do that in general?
We actually use Google Suite tools for OKRs. Yeah, so we use we use Sheets. We use Docs. We use Docs for explaining our philosophy of OKRs, and then just a deck for people to put them in, and then everyone gets in on comments. Everyone can challenge each other on the OKRs that they're taking on, and then depending on the quarter or not, we may have a session to kind of pressure test some of them. But some of them are, if it's actually this all kind of makes sense, then it just goes straight into the quarter.
How to keep culture on one hand, on the other hand, to grow a team. In case of everything is online, and of course there are some companies, teams that used to office work, some remote first teams. And do you have any like silver bullet to that? How to you have team of 10 people, then in one quarter you hire 20 more people remotely, and bam, you have a completely different team, like completely different.
It is a little bit harder to create a culture that really sticks, but you just have to work harder at it to ensure that people feel included and also can work together effectively. And there's one pitfall that I know we certainly fell into in the start, that we didn't think about time zones enough and a balance of people that work across time zones. And we felt that was not felt, it was true. That was where these teams fell down the most. It actually wasn't that they weren't together in a room. It was just for the people who were one person in San Francisco and the rest of the team in Ireland. That's tough. That's really tough. Yeah. So, okay. Doesn't matter where you're located, as long as your time zones are friendly together. Then it's easier to work on the rest. And the rest is making sure that different personalities have those factored into how people work. Just like if you're in person, it can't be the loudest person in the room who gets to talk all the time. So some people like prep work up front before a big meeting. Some people like to just turn up and wing it. So you have to, if you have both of those on your team, then you have to allow both an opportunity to have their voice heard. If you don't, then we're back to missed opportunities again.
I know, Louise, that you in HubSpot, right now you're director, but you started from product manager, right? Is there any keys to success, or you just work hard for days, for years, and that's it?
You should always be thinking about three things. And this is how I coach my team. It's how I evaluate my team. And there's now, I think 14 product managers. And they have different, from APMs right up to GPMs. And there are three things, regardless of your role, you just have different scopes. Regardless of your role, you need to have an impact in the missions that you're solving for that contribute to the customer and also revenue growth. You also need to contribute to the culture of our team. How do you help us become more than the sum of our parts? The lone wolf mentality is not something to be rewarded. It's, okay, are you impactful, but are you also contributing to the culture and how we think about product management? And then also, what is your contribution to the rest of our scope? That's the third area. So it's your own mission, is how do you contribute to the culture and health of our team? And then also, as you grow your influence within the team and within the company you're in, how are you also influencing other teams' roadmaps and strategy?
For engineering positions and engineering, you can still grow as an individual contributor, even though product is not growing that much. For example, you can participate in, awesome database creation or something super complex, and you can grow as an individual contributor, and your skills will be growing, but company can remain the same. Is it true for product managers? Can you, for example, grow as a product manager if company, same old startup with 30 people, or it's not connected?
When it's a 30 people company, there's not much room to grow, right? Because essentially the next step you will have is your kind of CPO of that small startup, right? Even that is interesting because For a company of the size of, let's say, 100 and then 1,000, a senior product manager means different things. And I wouldn't say that something is better than the other, right? So I'm enjoying a larger product, and I would say that for me, it's something that I would like to work with. But there is a certain joy and pleasure in working with smaller products. I think you can launch new kind of sub-products within weeks or something like that. That's totally impossible for a larger product where you have to think about kind of the impact on the whole user base and the whole platform that you're driving and stuff like that.
A lot of product managers who have a very large scope in a small company, they may own a whole product soup to nuts, may think that joining a Google is the next best step for them. But then they don't realize, oh, I'm one of 3 product managers who own the blue dot in Google Maps.
That size.
You know?
Yeah.
And it's a whole different mindset, whole different way of working. Your autonomy reduces in the kind of the footprint and the changes you can make. And you're not actually shipping a product, you're shipping a small change to something that hundreds of thousands of people own, and both have advantages and disadvantages.
Have you ever thought or dreamed about, can I return back in a small company where changes where you can, it's not even not about ownership, but about movement. So I suppose in HubSpot, I don't know exactly, but in Wrike, it's not, the pace is not the same as it was 5 years ago, because like from engineering standpoint, you was able to change a lot of things in one night.
I joined HubSpot because I was more specializing in smaller companies where my responsibility would be across a whole product or a suite. I joined HubSpot to really experience the slices that we've just been speaking about and how you build a great operating model across hundreds of teams and being part of that. I don't think I want to be part of one particular sized company in the future, but I like scaling things. So it's companies that are scaling quickly and want to scale effectively and their product team's really cranking. And the ownership of collective impact, I think is where my mindset is most now. Instead of maybe the ownership of a product, it's the ownership of collective impact is very exciting, where you are, the whole company is benefiting from the impact that you're generating.
As a product teams, as a product companies, we used to and we have to work with enterprise customers. So how, Louise, how do you work with huge customers? They can, for example, demand something, and how to say, okay, sorry, but we have to think about problem in general, not only about your particular problem.
Like we want to keep our customers happy, and also we want to really further ourselves all the time. We want to push the envelope, so to speak, on becoming more relevant for those bigger customers. But sometimes it can be the holy grail of making just enterprise customers really happy. You then break what works really well for the customer base that you have now. So you have to be very careful how much you dive into a concentration on those enterprise, on those special contracts, because suddenly you can organically find yourself painted into a corner where your teams are solving for a very few set of customers. And you also make your product so complex that what you initially solve for isn't very user-friendly anymore. And people then go to something that is more easy to use.
It's true that sometimes a lot of the things that the customer might want or might think that they want are very specific to what they're doing, but at the same time, we are committing to kind of researching into what is driving that, what is behind that. So what is that use case, or what is that scenario that's happening? And oftentimes what we find is that what our customer might want is a reflection of something that is useful for many other customers.
If you build a strong relationship with the sales team or the customer success team, people who are working with customers every day, and you have a nice feedback loop, and you have a degree of also working with those customers yourself, you have more of a first-hand account of really what the underlying problem is. And the person who owns that contract is less likely just to commit to things, but talk it out with you and see what the best response might be.
Absolutely.
What I like about interviewing a lot of people is that you hear, it keeps me very much in touch with how companies are operating. It's even to this day, it still surprises me how many product teams are just given, heads of products are just given ideas to just drop what you're doing. Here's what we're doing. We're going to enter this new market because there's this huge contract on the table. And there's no relationships. You have to, whether you're a PM, senior PM, director, doesn't matter. If you want to lead by influence, you have to create relationships across a company into the right teams. So you have cross-functional thinking about what the right next move is.
As a directors of people who definitely know what product management is, maybe we can talk a little bit about mindset of or skill set of a great product manager, and what do you need to be successful in this area? Not successful not only by numbers, I don't know, I'm doing that product or that, but about your personal contribution.
One of the things that really kind of is derivative from this conversation that we had right now, and I think that we've touched upon relationships a lot, right? And it's a relationship business. In terms of relationships with your customer, in terms of relationships with your peers, leading by influence, that's what is totally driven by relationships, right? And essentially, if you are capable of building relationships and keeping the eye on the goal, while at the same time maintaining relationships with others, and doing that in a very kind of balanced fashion, so that you're not leaning into kind of the people side of the business, but then you're not leaning into the technical and product side of the business. You're using those wings together to fly. So then when you do that, on any level, starting from product manager to senior product manager to any other level of product management, then you probably will be successful. That's an indicative.
Your whole company is a product. It's not just the software that you build. The whole company is a product. It's how people engage with your sales team, your customer success team, your support team, your documents. Everything is part of the product. And as a product management team, you have to know how every single little bit of that works. Not in minutia, but enough so you can piece the picture of the whole company as a product together. And then you know how your product fits into that and how you can drive impact. And that's where the relationships come in. To build an understanding, you have to work with the right people and getting them involved at the right moments to influence decisions. So as product managers, we lead by influence, but we also have to seek the right influence from others as well. Business savviness is also something that I'm looking to dial into a lot now in all of my hires. Because you will be customer centric with your empathy, but you also need to make revenue. So the sweet spot of those together that's where all the goodness happens.
Louise, if you have 2 weeks of vacation and unlimited amount of money, what do you do?
Well, before the holiday that I feel I always missed out on, that we were about to book before I found out I was pregnant the first time, was to go to Pakistan to go hiking in their mountains. Wow. So I feel I just missed out on that. I mean, not when I had a child, I was very excited. But I think that's the one that's one day I'd love to do that again. So I suppose that's the first one that comes to mind.
I think it's a good spot to stop and say thank you, Louise, thank you, Anton, for being here, and thank you, dear viewers, for staying with us, and I hope to see you in the next episode of Pyjama Talks. Bye-bye.